Good afternoon, Madam Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
We have some very important items on our agenda for today. Before I get started, though, I'd like to say March the 17th is designated as St. Patrick's Day. So I knew we would not be on the screen having a meeting on that day. So I wore my green. May be hard to see, in celebration and acknowledgement of those in our community that are Irish. So I wanted to make sure that happened, and that's why I'm wearing my green for all of us to celebrate. And then I just wanted to say before we move into our agenda that our evening meeting will be occurring this Thursday at 6:30 in Springfield Township. So for those who are on the beginning of our meeting and may not stay to the end, I just wanted people to know that. We can move into our agenda. We have our health commissioner, Commissioner Greg Esterman, is on to give us some information. Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, for having me, and happy to be here to provide some updates regarding COVID-19. Lots changing today, and I'll talk about some of the new eligibility requirements that just came out today by the State Department of Health and Governor DeWine. If you could just confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Wonderful, thank you. So to kick things off, last time I was at the county commissioner meeting, we did talk a little bit about a year in review, and I just wanted to share 3 slides that kind of put into perspective some of the work that my team has done throughout the year. And the first deals with enforcement. This has been a year in which we saw things happen in our community that we had no idea we would ever be doing, such as enforcing safe distances and wearing masks in stores. And so over the course of the last year, my environmental health inspectors conducted over 3,000 complaint inspections. Many of these are often handled with a phone call, but many of these also involve my team actually going and visiting the business. Of these 3,000, our mantra has always been education over enforcement. And I've always been impressed with our businesses. When we pick up the phone and talk to a business or visit a business, they almost always want to do the right thing. And I think to testament of that, we only had 71 notices of violation of the 3,000 complaints issued. So really applaud our businesses for all the hard work they did throughout the pandemic. Of those 71, 7 ended up getting referred to the prosecutor's office and needing additional attention. But really, when you think about the total number there, really impresses me, the things that our businesses did to be successful in this pandemic. Also, I wanted to touch base on contact tracing. We talk a lot about this throughout the pandemic, and less so now as we're kind of focusing our attention and our efforts on vaccinations. But my team and the contractors that we hired over the course of the pandemic conducted over 50,000 case investigations. That's 50,000 phone calls that my team made to individuals that had COVID within our community. Just a monumental task. And, it's a little sad. Right now, we are actually cutting back our team because our cases have decreased so significantly, and the Ohio Department of Health is taking on some of this work. But it's been such an amazing effort, and I've been so proud of these individuals for their work. In addition to the 50,000 cases that they worked on, they also worked on 700 outbreak investigations. So that's where a business, a daycare, a school had 2 or more cases of COVID-19. My team would swoop in and make sure that they had the tools necessary to prevent that outbreak from getting bigger. And so really just amazing work. And then the last kind of year in review slide that I wanted to share is about our website and our public information group. They really, day in and day out, we receive requests from the media. And it's been really humbling to think how much information we've gotten out there. And we've adjusted as we went. We had concerns to make sure our website was ADA compatible. We made adjustments, and we made it as ADA compatible as necessary, and as to make sure that it was able to reach everyone where they're at. So over the last year, we had over 1.5 million page views. So just tons of public interest. The biggest spike that we saw was clearly at the height of the pandemic, when lockdowns were happening back in April of 2020. But really throughout the pandemic, we've been one source for great information and to get the best, most up-to-date information possible. So shifting now a little bit to where we're at today, we continue to see significant improvements in our community with COVID-19. We have about 3,300 active cases of COVID in our community. That's significantly lower than it was just a few weeks ago. So we have a lot of COVID here, though. It's not time to let down our guard. People need to continue to be cautious as they're out and about trying to get some things back to normal. We still need to wear those masks, social distance, and keep sick at home. Similarly, looking at our case numbers, the peak of our pandemic as far as cases go was back on December 10th, 716 cases per day. We are now down to 97 cases per day when looking at a 7-week average. In a few slides, I will share the Ohio Alert System dashboard. That is going to show a 2-week average, and we're not quite down below 100, but that 100 threshold is important. If we can stay below that for a couple weeks, we as a county will transition back to orange, which I think is something we're all excited to see us leave red behind. Our positivity rate for Hamilton County continues to drop as well. Today, we're at 5.3% as a county for a whole. The suburbs are just slightly higher at 5.4%. The city of Cincinnati just slightly lower at 4.4%. Now, as our cases slow down, they've decreased, but they've kind of slowed down. We've kind of been stuck at a level plateau for a little bit. We're seeing on average between 40 and 80 cases countywide. You saw the average was 97. So when you throw in the city of Cincinnati, Norwood, and Springdale, what that means is our reproductive value is now going to start to potentially hover a little closer to 1. But I think we're at a safe level right now. I'd like to see more vaccine continue to lower our cases, and hopefully this will continue to decline. But I think that's a little bit to explain why we saw the slight uptake in our reproductive number. Just to put it into perspective, these are the age demographics. This is by 100,000, how many cases per 100,000 by age. You can see that every single age, we've seen a significant decline in overall cases, which once again goes to show that some of what we are doing is working really well. You've heard me talk about our elderly or our seniors having opportunity to get vaccinated. So you would expect to see those older than 60 with significant declines. But even those in the younger demographics that have had very little, if any, access to vaccine, we are continuing to see declines in cases in that demographic as well. So all positive trends when you look at it across the board. Hospitalizations are continuing to remain stable and low. We are at 174 patients in our 14-county region within our hospital systems. Of those, 57 individuals are in the intensive care unit. So very pleased to see these numbers stay at this new low plateau. As mentioned, the Ohio Alert System, we have 2 indicators that are currently flagged. As soon as indicator 1 drops below 100 on that 2-week average, we will then transition to level 2. So I'm very excited to see that happen, hopefully, as mentioned, in the next, hopefully, 2 weeks. New as of about 10 a.m. this morning, Ohio is expanding eligibility. The new eligibility kicks into place on Friday, March 19th, and there are really a few groups that are now eligible. First and foremost are those over 40 will now be eligible to get vaccinated in the state of Ohio. In addition, those with chronic kidney disease, those with obstructive pulmonary disease, heart disease, and obesity are now eligible to be vaccinated starting Friday in Ohio. And then lastly, Governor DeWine indicated that starting March 29th, any Ohioan over the age of 16 will be eligible to get vaccinated. I've had a couple questions regarding who is eligible and which vaccines. If you are over 18, the J&J vaccine and the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine are all safe. If you fall between the 16 and 18-year-old age range, only the Pfizer is eligible to be received because it's the only vaccine approved by the FDA for 16 to 18-year-olds. So something to keep in mind. There are many clinical trials happening, and at some point in the near future, we would anticipate 12 to 16-year-olds being eligible on one or several vaccines, but not yet. So where are we at in the state of Ohio? Here in Hamilton County in the state of Ohio, we are continuing to track just slightly above the state. About 1 in 5 Hamilton County residents have now been vaccinated, bringing our total to 166,000 people. So we are clearly making progress. We have a lot of work to go, but I think this is exciting news. Second doses are a little bit behind. We've only done about 12.6%. and those will continue to catch up, realizing they're always about 3 to 4 weeks because of the delay in second dose requirements. Looking at the age demographics, you can see that the elder populations have had access to vaccines, and the majority of those above 65 have had at least 2/3 of the population vaccinated. So we've made a lot of progress. Still a lot of work to go. I want to continue to reemphasize that as the age eligibility opens up, we will certainly have more folks wanting these doses than they are currently available. The other item I wanted to point out, as we open up vaccine availability, the county is seeing more vaccine. Last week, Hamilton County as a whole, there's 50 providers here. Hamilton County as a whole saw 14,000 doses. This week, Hamilton County is seeing 16,000 doses. And next week, we are getting 20,000 doses. In addition to those doses I just mentioned, we are also going to have the Cintas Center open up, and we will see an additional 5,000 to 6,000 doses. This is a regional resource coming straight to the middle of Hamilton County. Through some of the work of our partners and our collaborators, we will see some free public transportation. For many, many months now, we've had free transportation through the CARES Act and the Council on Aging. They're providing seniors free transportation. We know the Cancer Help Network is providing free transportation. And then for some of these vaccine weekends at the Cintas Center, we know Metro is going to start offering some free transportation as well. More details will be available on our website and the Health Collaborative's website in coming days. I will say this will be, the Cintas Center is being run by Kroger's. And so vaccination appointments are available. They all require a sign up, and that information is available on Kroger's website. I think they're planning on putting up information today about how to register for the 18th, which is the first day this mass clinic will open up. The couple points about some of our distribution strategies. Our plan is to continue to operate one central location, which we're doing out of the Board of Elections. They've been an excellent site. They're located next to bus lines. They've been easy and convenient. They're handicapped accessible, and they've really just been a great partner. So this is a nice location so that if we see a significant increase in vaccines, we're able to quickly get them out to our community. But I think one of the areas of success for Hamilton County has been that we are bringing vaccines to our communities. Each week, we're offering anywhere from 2 to 4 clinics within our communities. Those are often in senior centers, community centers, or other familiar locations where folks are comfortable coming. When we go to schedule those clinics, one of the strategies that we've been using is we've been pulling from zip codes around those locations. So we're really trying to bring people in from the community that we're serving. When I hear other health commissioners talk about some of their vaccine clinics, even in larger urban counties, they've had some difficulty filling appointments. And I think our success really comes down to this distributed model where we are taking vaccine out to our communities as opposed to just doing one location centrally in the county. You've heard me say we've had success in going to churches. We have worked with assisted living locations as well as some senior apartment buildings. And the Council on Aging continues to bring buses weekly to our location to help vaccinate seniors within our apartment buildings. We are also using, last week, we kind of rolled out our new vaccine vans. We are using these vans to help us in a couple ways. First and foremost, when we designed the vans back in late last year, we wanted to make sure we had a tool to bring vaccine around the county. We knew we would play a key role in distribution. And so you can see in the bottom 2 pictures, a big, large gray box. This is a vaccine refrigerator. It's pharmaceutical grade and built to make sure that the vaccine stays safe at all times. It's sealed and built so that it runs off the car battery. If we're next to a building, it will plug into the building. And it's really been a key component of our strategy. In addition, while our first preference is always brick and mortar, and I'll preface that our preference is brick and mortar because we don't have to mess with weather and we don't have to mess with the wind and rain and all of that goes with it. These do allow us to get into the community when inside locations aren't available. And our team this week and a couple times last week actually went to senior apartment buildings where many times we'll go into the building and use their lobby, but not all senior apartment buildings have a lobby. And so this allows us to set up outside and to bring residents to us and to have the vaccine safe right there in our community. You can see from the top right picture, we did set up in Woodlawn last week and ran a smaller clinic, only about 60 folks through. But I think this model is able to be scaled up. We could probably, with the staff that we had on site last week in Woodlawn, if needed, we could have probably done 300 individuals without a significant level of additional effort. So we're really thankful for this resource. I think 3 vans has been excellent, so we can go to multiple locations at once. And it's really been very, very successful for my team. And the last slide I have for you is today deals with something you might have heard came out last week from the Centers for Disease Control, but I've not yet presented to the commissioners. But, you know, why are we doing all this? Why are we getting everyone vaccinated? And it's been kind of challenging because some of the message has been, you know, you get vaccinated and you still have to wear your mask and you still have to social distance and you still have to do all of these things. But for the first time last week, the Centers for Disease Control said, actually, after you're vaccinated, 2 households that are both vaccinated can come together without any social distancing and without masks. That's big news. This is the first time we're saying this is safe. The other really big news from my perspective is the second box there, the second 2 houses, where one vaccinated household, such as grandma and grandpa, can get together with another household, such as their children and grandchildren, as long as everyone is low risk, and they can get together without masks. So for the first time in this pandemic, we're actually going to grandma and grandpa and saying it's safe to hug your kids as long as you're vaccinated. So really, once again, this is bringing hope to all of us. You know, we're all so excited to end this pandemic. And I'm really excited to finally see some guidance coming out from the Centers for Disease Control. This is a novel pandemic. We have never had COVID-19 before. We've never had vaccines for COVID-19. And so as we learn more from the science, we will continue to see some of these restrictions lifted and science tell us how we can continue to live our lives safely. But this is a huge first step. I will stop there and take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Commissioner Kesterman. Just a thorough report, comprehensive report. We thank you. I thank you, and I'm sure the board has some questions or comments. But I'd like to also say, as you look at all those graphs and everything going down as it relates to the age and the amount of people that are vaccinated is going up. So it's just really encouraging. And to think now that we're talking about not long ago, we were talking about 1,400 vaccines we had received, and now we're talking about 14,000. So just a very encouraging report. So at this time, I'd open it up to Vice President Reese, if you have any comments.
Madam President, if you don't mind, I'd like to allow Commissioner Driehaus. I know she has had several briefings on this, and like to let her add what they've been working on. Then I'd like to come back and have some questions. She may answer some of my questions in her comments.
Well, no, I just, the only thing I was going to add, Greg, and I hope you can expound on it, is that when we talk about this vaccine distribution, we've got some mass vaccination sites coming online this week, starting on Thursday, I believe, at the Cintas Center with Kroger being the partner there. And so that's supposed to be about 10,000 doses over 3 days. And then there's another commitment that Kroger will continue to do that work. It's going to be about 5,000 per week after that. And they will continue to be the partner there. So I just wanted to make sure that in addition to everything that the city, the county, the hospitals, FQACs are doing, these mass vac sites are going to be a huge game changer as eligibility expands. So I just wanted to highlight those as well as we continue to talk about how people can get in line to get the vaccine. I got my vaccine, by the way, yesterday.
Oh, great.
It went well. I went to the Board of Elections and I got to tell you, and I'm not just saying it, Greg, because you're on the call, but it was very efficient. People were very friendly. It was crowded. We were all distanced, but it was crowded. And I did ask Mike Salmons, who was there, because we're going to keep talking about these capacity issues. How much more could you do, right? If we got double the doses or triple the doses, and they're only in half of that BOE site. And so they could, just like that, expand throughout that building, allowing, assuming it could be staffed up for that. But so I think it was a great experience. I just, hats off, Greg, to you and your team. It really went well. My arm hurts, but hopefully that will go away soon.
And if I could, often we talk about these mass vaccination sites and we think of places big like the Cintas Center. Through the Board of Elections in a 4-hour period, it's not a big deal for us to run 500 people through that site. So by all definitions, even the Board of Elections is technically a mass vaccination site. I've refrained from using that terminology. It's just our central spot and we vaccinate people there.
Yep. Thank you.
Great. And I just would like to add that on Friday, Word of Deliverance had another vaccination process, and it went very smoothly. Lots of people were vaccinated. So Vice President Reese.
Yes, thank you. And first of all, I want to thank Commissioner Kesterman because it's a whole lot of moving parts and they move on a daily basis. And I appreciate all the work that you and your team is doing, and then all of the folks that are working on a regional level, because obviously there are some limitations that you have in terms of jurisdiction. And so we have to work in a coordinated way. So I want to thank you for that. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things, and I think things are great in terms of we are making progress. We are learning and moving, and we're getting people vaccinated. And our problem at first used to be we didn't have the supply. And the two people that control the supply, President Joe Biden being one, who had his first national address, and Governor DeWine, once it gets to the state, and I appreciate you, Commissioner Kesterman, explaining that. So when people watch and say, oh, why don't y'all do this or do that? The governor, once it comes to the state, determines who gets what and when. So it's very important to have the support of the governor, because he makes the decisions on who is eligible. And I'm happy that I'll finally make it. He's finally coming down to my opportunity to get vaccinated. I was with the governor on Friday at Riverview House, which is a CMHA facility, and Council on Aging was there, and the National Guard was there, and we had a chance to talk. And one of the things that even President Joe Biden is saying, he's got a very aggressive schedule. So we're going to get a lot of vaccine. Supply will not be our issue. There are a couple of things I just wanted to highlight. Minister Bumani Taimba, those who may know him, is at Corinthian Baptist Church. And he's a minister, and he coordinates when things come to the church. And I know we were at Corinthian Baptist Church, but he was unable to get vaccinated. And there are a lot of people who are concerned about how do you sign up? We all getting a ton of calls. So sign up is a problem. And so I want to highlight that because I know people are watching. Sign up is a problem, and I mentioned that to the governor. He has indicated that at some point, the signups will come with something different where you won't have to sign up. Oakland, California already has it. So both the governor and the president said that mobile is one of the major things that they want to see be very, very aggressive. And so I do thank you for we did a pilot, and you asked me where to go, and you said that we needed to go outside of the city because you couldn't go in the city of Cincinnati or Norwood. And so we went out to Woodlawn. We had 60 doses, but we had a lot of people that wanted it. And in the churches, we got a lot of choir members, a lot of deacons, a lot of trustees. So while we're at the churches, at least the two that I've been to, it isn't a guarantee that the people that go to the churches are actually the ones getting the vaccine. But I hope that when we get more supply, we'll be able to do that. I think that's what we talked about. It's no secret that I'm for a mobile RV technology-based bus, similar to Hampton University, and I will be bringing that before the commission this week to look at seeing if we can vote on it next week, up or down. I hope it's up. But I'm looking at other places and they're able to, when we start to get all this vaccine, we're going to have to be creative and be a lot of different places throughout the county. No matter where you are, we're going to be pulling up the restaurants. We might have to pull up to get the younger people wanting to do this. And it also provides us with an asset after COVID-19 is over to deal with health disparities and other things that, I'll be honest, on the equity side, African Americans are still dying of cancer, still dying of high blood pressure, still dying of diabetes and those kind of things. So we want to try to bring those down. But I do want to thank you for the pilot, and I want to thank Mayor Brian Poole for the pilot, but we had a lot of people that still wanted to do it. My question though would be, we've got 2 sites in Norwood. So we are at the Board of Elections with a mass site, and we're also at the Centos with a mass site. I know that Kroger's is running that, but can you maybe talk about that? We got 2 mass sites located in one community.
Yes. So I think it is important to realize that the Kroger site is a regional asset. The location was selected with some input from myself and the City of Cincinnati Health Commissioner, Commissioner Moore, but ultimately it was selected by the Ohio Department of Health as the location, and it is being run by Kroger. I selected Norwood long before. We've been operating out of there for 6 weeks, or I'm sorry, probably 8 weeks now. As a central location on bus lines. It was a great location because it's a county asset, it's a county building, and it's vacant right now. It's waiting for early voter registration and other election type activities. So they've really made a nice partner, and it's been a great location. And we're honestly able to fill a clinic at that location within a couple hours of emailing that we have available appointments. Unfortunately, we will be at some point losing that location as the election activities start to kick up, which is expected really to happen around July. And so it's my intention to stay central, but to continue to have one main location for my team to operate out of. And so we're looking for somewhere either in Norwood or potentially as far north as Forest Park along that central belt there from the county so that we can have access to east and west residents. And then, as mentioned, the other key portion of my strategy and my team strategy has really always been to decentralize. So I serve 45 communities, and for somebody from Anderson Township to have to go to Delhi to receive their vaccine, that's quite a commitment. That's a 50-minute drive. And so we've really been trying to host clinics around the county as much as possible, realizing that to do so, it's a twofold strategy. You know, if I did 50 clinics next week at 100, 50 clinics with 100 doses at each location, it's very staff intensive. So picking 1 or 2 locations where I can kind of make my central hub and then branching out to my communities has been a really good balance between getting vaccine out to the community and making sure that we're able to quickly get out large volumes of vaccine.
Thank you. I just wanted to indicate that the registration process, and it's not something we put together, and I've indicated this to the governor directly, is a deterrent. We got a lot of people who can't read, and people who can read, it is very difficult. People get frustrated and, give up on it. So I'm hoping that, he announced that they would be loosening that up, and hopefully we'll have a strategy where people can come up and be able to get vaccinated without all of the rigmarole.
Commissioner, if I may add, I couldn't agree more. Vaccine registration and getting appointments has been absolutely a barrier for all residents in Hamilton County and across the state. I think we've done some things that have made it easier, but it still remains a barrier. And as we open up age groups and we see more people eligible to be vaccinated, people are going to be frustrated. There's a couple new tools that have come online that I would encourage folks to check out. You can find links on our website. The state did add access to their VMS, their vaccine management software tool, and they do show you where providers are and show in many cases when there's appointments available. Not a perfect system, but it is one more tool in the toolbox. Our website also lists all of those providers. And then which our website lists and has links and phone numbers for all of the providers. And then lastly, as you know, 211 is another resource. That said, even with all 3 things that I just mentioned, people are frustrated, and clearly we can make the system better as we continue on. So clearly noted, and we'll continue to work on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. And I agree with you as it relates to our mass vaccination sites, and that I mentioned to Greg about the possibility, and also Jeff, of looking at Sharonville Convention Center, which is not being used, more in the north area, and whether or not there's a possibility of using that big area. And in addition, as Greg was saying, not being able to use BOE in a little while in July also means that we need to find another place, but I'd like to do it if we can before, of course, July. But I had also had that concern.
Madam President,
Yes.
can I add, just to clarify, Greg, if in July, when the BOE is not available, is that a long-term situation until through the end of the year? Or is that a short-term situation where we could go back in and then we'd have to go back out again?
You know, I think the unfortunate thing is this is a novel pandemic. I don't know what the governor is thinking for vaccine solutions. At some point, I suspect we'll have vaccine enough for every pharmacy and every primary care physician to have vaccine. And when that happens, my role as public health is really no longer the same level as it is today. And I don't know when we get to that point. Are we to that point by July, August? I really hope so. But I don't have that crystal ball, and I really don't know the answer. But my goal with the Board of Elections would be for us to find another location ahead of time so that we can start doing things out of there 1 or 2 days of the week and slowly phase back out of the board election so we're completely done by July. The other complicated thing is right now we're operating with Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, which requires a second dose. And I've really made the commitment that if you get a first dose, we're going to offer the second dose at the same spot. Really goes back to that. I don't want to make Anderson Township resident drive to Delhi to get their second dose. So we need to be finished up with second doses in July so that folks aren't having to travel somewhere else to get their second dose.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate it, and let your team know, as you often do, I'm sure, that we appreciate all the work that's being done.
Thank you very much. I will do that.
Mhm.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay, so we'll move on to our second item on the agenda, which is a presentation by CHMA. The Chief Executive Officer, Gregory Johnson. How are you, sir?
Oh, well, how about yourself?
I'm doing great.
So
Your presentation.
I will start by trying to figure out to share my screen here. So if I mess up a little bit, please just bear with me a couple minutes.
Okay.
And I also, while I'm doing this, want to say thank you to all three of you for your support in attending my Reno days and grand reopening days as well. I know your time is very valuable, and I wanted to make sure that we're using it wisely. Just like that technology to kind of bonk out on you, right when you need it, isn't it?
Well, it did say it was starting to share before you got back out of it, so.
I like the shovels in the background there, Greg. Those are nice.
Those are all of the projects that I have completed, and the renovations are the sledgehammers. And my goal is to have the wall totally occupied
Awesome.
by the time. So that is my ultimate goal here. So let's see if I can restart this real quick.
There you go.
There you go.
All right. Okay, sorry about that. So I know you've heard me talk about, there's obviously housing is a huge conversation, as your previous conversation that you had. And I would have to say I enjoyed the presentation myself that Commissioner gave. And the interesting part is every time you guys said Greg, I moved my head like you were talking to me. So that was, as everybody's been talking about housing and what's needed in our community, we have a $40,000 mark, 40,000 unit mark, and also we need to preserve the housing that we have, and we need to make some of that preservation centered around quality, affordable housing. And so what I wanted to do, and I had a chance and opportunity to talk to Jeff, and I appreciate his recommendation, is to give you guys a presentation on what we're doing holistically as far as preserving our portfolio, and then some of the things that we're going to be moving towards to try to add additional affordable housing. I also want to say thank you for your support. A couple of these projects, county dollars went into some of the new development, and also county dollars will be going into some of the rehab. But I want to also, I know you guys are working on a plan on how to holistically use your dollars and partnerships. I will tell you that one of the biggest things that I wanted to show you is partnering with CMHA is a public-private partnership, even though we're a public entity. This $1 billion, as you all know, will not come from the public sector. So a lot of the projects we've had to do public-private partnerships as we've been moving forward with some of these items. So just a couple of the recently completed projects, and I know Madam President and Vice President, you guys attended, and I appreciate your attendance and speaking at a couple of these. But this is our Sutterview project, was at $34 million that we've completed. This is our Evanston at $3 million that we've completed. And those are all occupied and brought back online. And here are additional projects, this is in Colerain Township that's newly developed. County had support and dollars in this. It's a $14 million development with 100 units that is in the county. Here's Kerry Crossings for handicap accessibility, which is over $7 million project that's been completed. The Reserve on South Martin, another $12 million project that's been completed. And these are all new construction developments that the Housing Authority has put together. And another project at $16 million in Springdale that I wanted to make sure that I add. And all of these projects were from support from the county. And so I want to say thank you, and we definitely appreciate that. So let's talk about a few of our ongoing projects. So a few of our ongoing projects at 190 units, which is on 8th Street. But as you can see, it's $38 million project with total renovation, and we're about 40% complete with this. And by the end of the year, we'll be done, and residents are moving in place in this particular project as well. Park Eden is another project that we're working on. We're about 30% done, which is at $35 million with this project. And so at the end of the year, again, this project will be turned back over and we'll be done with this project as well. Bennett Point is a brand new project that we're working on that's across from the casino. That'll be about a little over $17 million. That'll be new construction of 56 units. Of a couple buildings. It'll be mixed income building. And one of the most important pieces on this project, it talks about the commercial laundry space, which there is no laundry downtown in OTR, which was very surprising to me. That was one of the best features that people like. So let's talk about what's in our pipeline. Mariana Terrace, which is in the county in Lincoln Heights, will get a total gut rehab at a $16 million renovation. We plan on closing somewhere in September on this project, and it'll take us another 12 months to complete the total renovation of the project. And this is one of the projects that the county has issued and helped us from the financial piece as well. And so we appreciate that as we continue to go forward. Horizon Hills will close on this summer. This will be a little over $2 million project, but just a few years ago, we put $6 million in this project. and it'll be totally renovated after we complete this 131 units in East Walnut Hills neighborhood, about $26 million, which will be historic credits, but it'll get a total renovation, which is Riverview in San Marco. And the Riverview House is where you were, Commissioner Reese, the other day for the vaccinations. And so those two buildings are on slate to be redone at a $26 million clip for those two buildings. The Reading is also 3700 Reading Avenue, a $19 million project, which is on slated to be done, started June 2022. Maple Tower, it'll be somewhere around September 2022. It'll be totally gut rehab, and another $27 million project that we have on slate to be worked on. The same with the Beechwood would be over $31 million project that we'll be working on, and it'll be somewhere around October, the start date of 2022 as well. This is a huge one, Winton Terrace and Fenlater Gardens. Right now, there's over 1,400 units sit on 4 blocks. This project is gonna have at least 9 phases. We're partnering with a developer to help us with this project since it's so large. It'll probably be somewhere north of $110 million, but it'll be total renovation and maybe some adding some senior housing to that project as well. Logan Street is another new development right in OTR of the senior housing. A little over $10 million project would be new construction that we're working on of 42 units. And then it's a partnership with CAS. They'll be occupying the first floor and with their offices and services for the residents. And then we're working on a Scholar House, 50 units. That'll be a little over $16 million project that we'll be developing as well. So the biggie, Choice Neighborhoods. So I'm sure everyone's familiar that we received a Choice Neighborhood Planning Grant. And the planning, it takes about 1.5 to 2 years. This is for the Stanley Row, Liberty Street in the West End. This project is 564 units in a 2-block radius. And as you can see, this will be a long process with the residents, resident focus up front. We've divided it up into 3 major categories, which is housing, people, and neighborhood. And we've partnered with CBI and the local nonprofit Seven Hills to lead all of our resident and community efforts as we bring everybody together to put together a holistic plan. Here again, I just wanted to go over Choice Neighborhood Advisory Council. And so over the 3 groups, we'll have an advisory council and making sure that we're sharing information and that it's an open planning process. This is going to be important for everybody because we're looking at this, it's going to be somewhere north of $150 million redevelopment as we look at trying to find 564 places to reconstruct, rehab those units right in the West End neighborhood. Here again, I just wanted to kind of, dovetail out the Housing Task Force, who the lead agencies are, Neighborhood Task Force, and then People Task Force, and who the lead agencies are, and some of our partners as well. We have our first kickoff meeting will be this Monday for our Choice Neighborhood Planning Grant we had over 32 partners and support letters for this project. And I got those letters within 2 weeks of submitting the planning grant. And with that, we raised about 25% of the $227,000 that you have to raise of support from community. So there's one thing I know, and I've not been here that long, but with that many groups and organizations giving you support, that's something that Cincinnatians want. So we want to make sure we do an open planning process. Here again, I just wanted to show some of our partners in this, because this project is going to be huge. There's really a lot of media surrounding it. And I think it's important that everybody obviously is a part of it, but I think it's an opportunity for Cincinnati, the West End neighborhood, FC came in, but I think this is an opportunity to make sure to stabilize the affordable housing, make sure families and individuals have quality affordable housing. We're going to be working on a homeownership project in City West, where there will be affordable units mixed with market rate units. So I think this is a great opportunity to transform that whole neighborhood. And as you can see, we're adding everybody in with a whole host of partners. So everybody will have their opportunity to mold and shape this plan. I wanted to talk about pillars, and the pillars for the Choice neighborhood are very important. And the reason that they're very important is because there's strategy, there's HUD, there's the city, there's a county, and we have all of these organizations that have their rules and regulations. So what we wanted to do is to make sure that the foundation of this plan is built around what is in place today, so we don't come up with a plan that doesn't fit within the city rules, that doesn't fit within the HUD rules, doesn't fit in county rules. So what we're doing, and we're going to make sure that all of these different groups, and as you can see, they're color coded, they have their pillars or their starting bases, so everybody knows what the rules are. What the rules are for coming back for residents, what the rules are for one-for-one replacement. So if you talk about one-for-one replacement, I talked about 564 units. The Housing Authority is committed to making sure that we bring 564 units back into our community so we don't lose any affordable units. The other thing about that is, with current rules, environmentals and things like that, can 564 units fit right there on that platform? And the $1 million question is no, they can't. So how does that happen? And that's why this plan is so important. Every resident is going to have a place to say, we're not going to make anyone homeless, but we might have to make sure that we're working within those pillars and rules of the organizations that we're governed by. And then obviously we don't want to put a plan together that we submit to HUD and they reject it because we didn't follow their processes. So let's talk about, why am I telling you all this? Other than I like talking to you guys and I hope you guys like listening to me. What is one of the biggest impacts of why we do and how we look at government, and what part or what role? I always tell my son, now stay in your lane now. One of the things is about the economic impact. And if you talk about a housing authority and why a housing authority was created, it was about the economic impact that the housing authority can have on the community and the neighborhood. When you look at it, most people kind of think about it, well, it's all public dollars, and that's what you're spending, and that's what you just keep churning. The way that when I came in, and as we're looking at what is the economic impact and how should we be moving this needle, we should be moving this needle the way we're formulating this. Now, I just probably talked about more than $1 billion worth of new development and rehab that we're doing. Just with the few rehab projects that we have, we've been able to generate over $100 million on our own with going to private-public partnership. So it's not that we're just asking every dollar for HUD. We're not just asking every dollar from the county, every dollar from the city. We're marrying up that public-private partnership But then when you talk about what is the return on that, the lowest hanging fruit thing would be the return is we get quality affordable housing, we improve neighborhoods, and residents get a decent place to stay. But one of the major impacts to the county and to the city is the economic growth of job growth and job growth to businesses that have been notoriously ignored in the past. So I just want to talk a little bit about the economic impact and some of the things that we're doing. We don't do any services. We're not good at it. That's not what we do. We partner with people that get dollars to do it and that are very, very good at it, like your Easter Seals and places like that, because they're really good at it. So fostering our training opportunities, increasing employment, increased business opportunities for local and Section 3 businesses is very critical to all of that work I just talked about that we're embarking on. So the economic strategy, I have a strategic plan, established reaching new goals and objectives. HUD has their goals. Our goals surpass all of HUD goals. And as you guys have been on the renovation and the grand reopenings, one of the first things I always lead off with is the Section 3 MBE, WBE participation. And I'll challenge anybody to be as good as we are, because that is one of my personal focuses, is to make sure that nobody is passed over as we're doing this work. So when you talk about establishing increased Section 3 goals, 20%, putting added language in our MDAs, our management development agreements, our RAD goals, job opportunities for Section 3 workers, and increased community awareness. But at the end of the day, it's about training Section 3 minority-owned and women-owned businesses and making sure that the work is available to make sure they can partake in it. So if you just look at some of the numbers that we've been able to accomplish just in 2020, and we started this in 2019, but 61%, 26%, you can see our agency, you can see our Section 3. Now, I don't measure it in percentage of work. The way I do it here is percentage of real money, because that percentage of work doesn't mean anything unless you get that money and you're able to put it in your pocket. And then you can look at our low income job creation. How many jobs are we creating? We capture, we measure that. How many new jobs are we creating by doing this work? And then the big story is, what is the average rate that a person can earn by these jobs, from $23 to $38 an hour? And here's our MBE, WBE percentages. Commissioner Driehaus, I remember that day when you were out there. But then you look at their training program that we have, and we've put together one of the best partnerships I think we have with Easter Seals and Lowe's. So some of these major projects, as we go into the Winton and the Finlaters and the Millvilles to rehab and redo these units, my goal is to get as many residents to either partake in that work or start a small business and be able to partake in that work. So we've partnered with Easter Seals to do a 13-week training. Lowe's is going to provide all of the tools after the training for residents. If you go into painting, if you go into carpentry, if you go into plumbing. So then it's not that I don't have the tools. And one of the best things in the world, and this happened at Certaview, is we see a person every day get up in the morning, put their kid on the bus and walk across the street and go to work. And this happened at Certaview with a gentleman that was raising his daughter on his own, and he put his daughter, and he was there for his daughter when his daughter got back home off the bus, and he was averaging $27 an hour, an income. So he's able to take care of his family. He's able to put back into his neighborhood where he's living and working as well. So I went through that and I wanted to give you guys an update. Again, I wanted to tell you, thank you for your partnership. That doesn't mean I'm not going to come back and ask you for anything, but what it does mean is that I think you can see what we're trying to do here, preserve everything we have, continue to build new, invest in our human resource and the people that are in our company with our MBE, WB, and small businesses, and with a little financial support from the county. As you can see, we can, for lack of a better word, parlay it with private dollars and achieve that turning of those public-private partnerships through the Housing Authority. So thank you so much for taking the time. I know that was a little longer than I expected, but I'll take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. It was a great presentation. I will open it up for my fellow commissioners, and I have a few comments at the end. Vice President Reese.
Yes, thank you, Greg, for this presentation, this comprehensive presentation of all the work that you're doing. And I'm glad you highlighted the economic component of it, because a lot of times when we do things, we don't look at how we're putting more money back into the economy and creating jobs. And I'm glad that you also highlighted that you all are one of the big developers in terms of land development, housing development. Just had a couple of questions. I was with you virtually at the opening of Sutterview, which was a difficult, I would say complex. I wouldn't say difficult, but it was a complex. You said one of the most complex developments that you have put together. I'm very familiar with English Woods. It was English Woods when I was growing up, and you had to move people and then bring them back. Wanted to just highlight, or maybe you can talk about that as you talk about the West End project, which is near and dear to me. My grandmother was at 1082 Lynn Street, and I spent a lot of time with her down in the West End. And what would be the moving, if any, on these projects? Where do we move folks? And how, when we come back, are we coming back with fewer units or the same amount of units? Because there's a big push for us to have affordable housing, and we're looking at comprehensively in the county how we can have affordable housing. So can you maybe talk about that?
Sure. So for our preservation, we're not going to lose any units for our preservation. So all the units that were there at Sutterview, at Evanston are the same number of units. As far as the relocation, we work with the residents because we have to work under a Uniform Relocation Act. So a person could, and we let them know, here's the approximate amount of time that you would have to temporarily relocate. And then the person obviously has an option to say, I don't want to come back. I want to relocate permanently, and I'll find a location. But we help them find that location as well. But I would say 65 to 70% of the residents at Sutterview, let's just take Sutterview, they did come back. And so they relocated into some of our other complexes. They relocated with family members that we pay the family member rent, just like they would pay the rent, we pay it on their behalf. And then some individuals went to an apartment unit in the community. So let's say a person goes to an apartment, there's no other 2-bedroom apartments and they have to go to the private market. Let's say their rent is $140, but that apartment rent is $350, just to make the numbers round. We pay the difference. So that doesn't cost them anymore to stay there. We pay the difference. If we were paying their utilities, we would pay their utilities there. And so they're relocated to come back. So Sutterview, in the relocation aspect, it was a variety of all of those pieces that we put together. And let's say someone's in a school district, they live in a school district that I don't want my kids to go to the school district that I'm willing to relocate there temporarily, but I want my kids to stay in the school district over here. Only thing we do is, from me, I write the superintendent and the principal a letter to let them know of what we're doing and then they'll allow the kids to stay in that school district so they don't have to move school districts either. So the relocation pieces are, we use private, which if there's a difference in pay, we pay. We use, if someone wants a family member, or you can stay in our housing stock that we have as well. So those are the three options we use for Sutterview. So as we continue to do this, so let me cover one more piece, because I think this is a great question. In our high rises, so you saw I had quite a few high rises there. We start at the top floors and we come down. So mostly what happens, only one floor has to actually move out. And then what happens is, as we complete the floors, we just move people up, 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 up. And then like Pinecrest, we only had one floor that had to actually move out. And I don't even think it was a whole floor, because we had vacant units. We just moved people down in the building. A few people moved out. We finished the first top 2 floors, and we just start moving people up into the new units. And that's the same for Park Eden. And that's if we're gonna rehab a building. Even if like the planning for Stanley Row, I'm probably gonna tell you now, I would be totally shocked if they came up with a plan to save those buildings. I could put $10 million in those buildings today, in one of those, and you wouldn't even know I've been there. So we have to look at what is the economic piece to providing this affordable housing. Even if you looked at, when you looked at the new construction at 16, 17 million, the rehab was double that cost, because you're retrofitting, taking things away, putting new things in, and the retrofitting is expensive as well. But we know that we need to make these units in our community better. And from a long-term, and then where else would people go? We don't have that many units to relocate them. So it makes sense to issue that cost and go through that process on those units. If we're talking about the West End, we have to look at what's available in the West End. If there's let's say there's come back with a plan to redo Liberty Street, to redo Stanley Row, A and B in the row houses, what does that look like? Can you move people from A to B while you build B, or Liberty Street? So we have to look at all of those different variables. We have City West that's right there. That's a good partner of ours. Obviously, we redid that with a partner. We're working on actually bringing in a new partner to actually rehab that project as well. So hopefully, while we're doing some implementation, applying for the implementation grant for the West End, they're working on rehabbing some of the existing City West units, because they need rehab today. And then all of that will come up, and we will have an area probably where it's been an investment of public-private partnerships. I'm thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe $500 million. And how great would that be and it's all generated by little CMHA. So that's kind of a long answer, but each scenario is a little different. And so I kind of wanted to give you each viewpoint of how all of that works.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate your leadership. My final question goes to, you've been around for different administrations. We've got a new administration in the White House with a different vision than the last administration as it related to public housing. Do you see with the new Secretary of HUD, is there any changes or any opportunities that you think will be coming down the pipe to help us?
Well, I think there's going to definitely be some changes. I'm talking about, in this conversation, bricks and mortars. I know the new secretary is really about healthy eating. And so what I'm projecting is there are going to be some new grants and new approaches to how do we help people and help people get healthy. So what would be one of my things is to looking at who in our community is a great community partner so we can partner with them to receive some of those dollars through the Housing Authority so we can talk about teaching people how to cook, how to shop, and other healthy. I actually think that'll be the first thing that she'll do. Then I think the other things, as she gets all of, the broad perspective of what's going on, then she'll dovetail into the bricks and mortars. But just like any of us, I think we're going to go to like what we're used to first, which we can make a huge impact, right? I mean, that's something that we definitely need for our families, especially during the pandemic. One of the things we've been partnering with a church and delivering meals to residents through the whole pandemic. So that's what I think, but I think it'll be a good thing. I'm excited about what's going to happen, overall.
So thank you, Madam President. I'm looking forward to it with our I love saying Secretary Marcia Fudge.
Yes.
I just want to thank Greg for the presentation and looking forward to being a partner, continue to be a partner in the future.
Thank you. And I'm not surprised that she'd look at healthy eating because originally she wanted to be the Secretary of Agriculture.
Yes.
Incorporate that in that process. So that's really smart thinking. So thank you, Vice President, and thank you, Greg. I'll move on to Commissioner Dreehouse.
Yeah, I feel like we've got a hometown advantage there, so that's good. At least for Ohio. So I have three things. So first of all, Greg, thank you for your continued partnership. As you know, this commission has prioritized affordable housing. And so we're looking forward to really, really getting more active in that space here in the next year, really before then. And so look forward to your partnership and trying to figure out that equation throughout the county. I have a very broad question for you. So when you talked about all the different projects, some of which were renovations, some of which were new, because of the ongoing pressures to build new, because we don't have enough affordable housing, and I know this is an unfair question, so I'm not going to ask you for the exact numbers, but could you give us an idea by way of percentage maybe, how much of the work CMHA is doing is related to new versus renovation?
No, I can give it to you right off the top of my head. Right now, 85% of our work is built to preservation. And the reason is because we had our housing stock is 70 plus years old. So when I looked at the whole circumference of it, I got to save the housing stock that we have because we don't want to lose that. So a lot of my efforts is centered around using the HUD, the RAD that's allowing us to go out and do a public-private partnership. And that's the only way that you bring money in because HUD's allowing this new program. So, and that's the reason that my number is 85% today. Now, when I first came, I would have told you that was about 99%. So now I'm more in, and as you saw with the projects that we completed, now what we're trying to do is ensure that every year, at least from a 9% perspective, that we apply for 2 9% new construction awards. So that's why the Logan House and the Scholar House, because what we want to do is to try to generate either between 100 or 200 brand new units. And then with that, just to kind of give you a perspective, since 2019, I've been able to preserve a little over 500 units. So what I'm trying to do, if I look at a year or 2 years, I potentially could have a 700 unit impact. We did West Union. I was doing preservation, but West Union was 100 units. Reserve was 64 units. So every year I've been able to bring, since I've been here, been able to bring new units and add them. I think here's the thing, the way to kind of for us to look at this from a community. It's not just what is the definition of affordable housing. That is the key word. Affordable housing is for everybody on this call because it has to be that we can afford it, right? So then when you look at it, who are we trying to help? So I always break it down to 0 to 30% of AMI, 30 to 60, 60 to 80. Those are the rams of where we're saying they need the most impact. And the reason, and then you say, well, why? What has happened in our community and our country? Well, 2008 happened. And what happened in 2008? Everything crashed. So the people that usually buy homes, they're renting. And so it's pretty much encroachment on the supply of rental units that would normally be in the community for people to rent. So now what's happened, the rates have gone up. So people are struggling even more because the landowners, the landlords have raised the rent so high. So it's kind of like a perfect storm. So one of the things that I try to do is to say, okay, I have my housing choice voucher program that I didn't even speak to you guys about. I got over 11,000 vouchers, but that program has grown to $80 million. So in this community, I give out $80 million to landlords on behalf of tenants for rent. That program has increased because of the pandemic, because obviously people lost their job and our support is higher. When I was here the previous years, it didn't move more than $10 a year, up or down. It moved $110 in 3 months during the pandemic. I don't see it coming down any soon, right? I just don't see it, right? So basically what that tells me is my voucher holders are fighting with the market, right? That's what our main problem is. So now we have to figure out what is that new rehab and what is that new production that will weather the storm. And no one in the country is doing it well at this point, right? But that is where it's a simple math, but we just got to find out what is that break even, get there, and then what is our natural progression. And all of it's going to be dependent on the economy. The economy does well, then you'll see people buy more houses and you'll see some of the units opening up. If it doesn't, which I don't think this new generation is going to go out and start buying them. So I think our production, we're going to have to hit that production number to help out those families and individuals. Because what's happening now, families are living together where they really should be apart. You know, there's two, three heads of household because they can't afford to rent.
Mhm. So can I just ask a follow-up to that, and then I just have one more question. So the you mentioned the scattered site, model. So how much of the portfolio, because you didn't really reference it much in your presentation. So you've got the building new, you've got the renovations, you've got the scattered site. How much of the portfolio is the scattered site?
It's almost 50-50. A lot of people don't think that because they look at Winton Terrace or Millville and say, that's all it. We actually are really almost split 50-50 actually between county and the city as well. So with units I brought on in Green Township, I didn't even talk about those. Those are all scattered site units that we brought on. I have a whole nother portfolio that the Housing Authority got from the county that we maintain from years ago that's in the city. And it makes up of single family homes, 4 units, 2 units. And so obviously that's a great portfolio that we want to keep, because it helps families in Oak Hills, school districts. So we want to make sure we keep those up and keep them online for affordability because they blend right into the neighborhoods and people don't know, which is great. And we want to do more of that as well, building specialty, but then grabbing and rehabbing some of the 4s, 6s, and 2s that's scattered throughout as well. So that was part of, the partnership with the county is to how do I expand my portfolio in Hamilton County with the mix of new construction, but with that also that mix of existing that does all of those things that we're talking about. So it's about 50-50. And you got to find the right family that doesn't need, you know, bus transportation, things like that, which there's plenty of families, they just need a little boost and they'll be fine. They don't need everything.
Right. Thank you. And thanks for the explanation related to the rehab. I totally understand what you're saying. You got to preserve or else you lose, right? So
Right.
you got to do all of the above, I think is what you're saying. So one last question. I too was going to focus a little bit on Stanley Rowe. So remember, you weren't here when Lincoln and Laurel were taken down, but there seemed to be, there was an issue when that was rebuilt with the Hope 6 project, that people would have an opportunity to come back. And from my understanding way back when, that didn't always happen. And so there was a lot of discord around that. And there also didn't seem to be a plan because there were so many families impacted, because there were huge high rises. People really didn't understand where the opportunities were for them to temporarily go somewhere and then perhaps come back if they so chose. So I know Stanley Rowe is also a very large complex. And so I heard you talk to Commissioner Reese about trying to figure that out. I don't want you to go into the explanation again, but I do want to say that I do hope that the options are robust and people understand them well. And so they're not left wondering, number one, where do they go now? And number two, can they come back? And so I think that floor to floor makes a lot of sense, but I know Stanley Rowe's bigger than Pinecrest. So, you know, anyway, I just wanted to weigh in on that because, there was quite a bit of concern many years ago when Lincoln and Laurel came down.
And I just have one comment on that. You're exactly right. But the reason that I did bring it up, because I do want you guys to understand, because I know people will come to you and obviously you hear things. Let's just think about Stanley, when the highway came through and when Stanley Rowe was built and what environmentals were in place back then. And so let's go back to the pillars. The environmentals today wouldn't allow you to rebuild Stanley Rowe there, right? Because the highway and the pollution and the noise, you can't do that today. So the question is, as the plan is put together, and if that plan is to take down one or two high rises, how much can go back there based on today's standards? So where we're starting is making it clear that nothing's been deemed in the plan, but like you're saying, making sure people understand if you choose A, and if A is to take it down, well, you know, we're gonna have to figure out, and we'll do that, where else to build, acquire, and maybe half of you guys can come back in this building and the other half will have to go in the new place that you talk about. And I think maybe that is where the rubber meets the road, and you got to have that conversation up front. So actually this week, my partners are starting to have those conversations so we can just see where we go. And then the conversation starting with the residents, because I'll be 120% honest with you. What I said to my partners just last month, I want you to understand that this is the communication that has to go out. And I want to ask you, do you want to continue, or should we just give the grant back? I said, because the one thing I don't want is 2 years of fussing and fighting and we never get together and get a solid plan together to submit. And a lot of people are mad or upset. I said, it's not going to be worth it for our community, for the housing authority, or anyone. I said, so the communication has to be clear, depending on what the pillars say. And one of the pillars in that is, and I know this is a long answer, but I think this is kind of what you want. 93% of the residents that live there today are between 0 and 30% of income. 93%. One of the HUD pillars say, if you take something down, you have to come back with mixed income. It's not talking market, it's talking 30, 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 80. So if you take it down, one down, the rules say you can't bring it back the way it was. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's important to have that conversation. And I'm so glad you asked it, because I wanted to, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And what the partners said, we still think it'll be better for the residents and the neighborhood if we go through this process, but make sure everybody understands and work on a plan that's agreeable. And that's when I said that, and I had the conversation with my board. I said, I want everybody, because I did see all of that, what happened, and I've done a Hope 6 before, and to be totally 100% honest with you, the Hope 6 was built on the same premise. So I don't know who didn't communicate it like this, but I'm thinking that didn't happen. That's why I want to make sure we do it up front, and before we do anything. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. And as our other commissioners have mentioned, affordable housing is top on our priority list. And so there's a lot that was left unsaid because you are a humble man. I met you when I first started, and we met in the office. And so I made some little notes as you were speaking, which I can't read now because there were so many brought out. So maybe that's a good thing. But first of all, I wanted to talk about how you leverage the monies that you get and how well you've done with the monies that you've received. I mean, that's admirable. And so the other thing I wanted to talk about, you talked about vouchers, even though you didn't talk a lot then, but I gave you a call about domestic violence and the women that needed a place to stay. And you immediately told me about the vouchers you have. And I think you were able to finance maybe 10, 12 women. And I just appreciate that. And you explained that voucher system as it relates to that. I also want to say, when you say CMHA housing, it used to be a time where you could kind of take a look and know which one was a CMHA housing project. But now with your creativity and the team that you have, you would never know. And nobody needs to know.
Right.
Just the look is something that you have changed. I want to also say about your commitment to self-sufficiency. When I came to the grand opening, I don't know, maybe it was in 19, for the resource center that you opened. Yeah. And that resource center was for the residents in that area that needed a computer and had no access and no Wi-Fi to become self-sufficient. So that was something that you did not need to do. And so as far as a thumbprint on affordable housing, as you were saying, it's about 40,000 more units of affordable housing. And from your presentation, I think you've taken care of 25. If you continue the way you're going, it'll be just a great thing for Hamilton County. And I believe probably lastly, you are a very caring, compassionate CEO. And so the county is blessed to have you in that important position. I can remember, I want to say last year, you were thinking about going to Atlanta. I read that, and they wanted you, and you made the decision to stay. And I don't know how happy you were, but I was extremely happy because I did not want to lose someone who's doing such an important job and is so compassionate for the population that he's working with. So I thank you so much. This was a long conversation that was well needed because it is one of our priorities. And I just want to thank you and your team for all that you're doing and look forward to even greater things, CMHA.
Well, thank you so much. And I apologize for taking up your time, but I'm a little long-winded. I don't talk a lot, but when I do, you get me going. But I think housing, I grew up in public housing. So when I look at our residents, I'm looking in the mirror and I'm saying, how would I want to be treated? So I'm trying to go as fast as I can and do my best to do that. So, and I'm very happy that I stayed in Cincinnati. So I think, I'm happy. My wife and family's happy. So that's great. But no, I just want to with all of that, I've been able to do, what I wanted to show you is that I've been able to kind of work through this, but with a larger presence or partnership from the county, I can do more.
Okay.
Love
I'm
I
sure.
can do more. I could do more. But I think it's along the lines of what you guys would want to see, along the lines of what our community needs. And at the end of the day, what we would be doing is taking that force and turning it
Mhm.
where there's dollars coming back and there's growth and people being lifted up. It's not housing, it's all of that. So
All of that.
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And then again, I'm sorry about your time. I think Jeff told me I
Oh,
had
don't
7
be
minutes. and
sorry.
I went way over 7 minutes.
No, don't be sorry. I'm sure we all appreciated that. So, and the people that are watching. So thank you so much for all that you do.
Thanks, Greg.
Mhm.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Greg.
Mhm. Okay, so we will move on to our last agenda item. There is an executive session that we have coming up. I would like to make a motion to go into executive session pursuant to RC Section 121.22G2 to consider the acquisition of property.
Second,
Commissioner Summer Dumas,
Yes.
Commissioner Reese,
yes.
Commissioner Dreehouse.
Yes.